I'll just quote or paraphrase from the end of his article. Our current gun culture, Whitlock wrote, ensures that more and more domestic disputes will end in the ultimate tragedy, and that more convenience store confrontations over loud music coming from a car will leave more teenage boys bloodied and dead. Handguns do not enhance our safety. They exacerbate our flaws, tempt us to escalate arguments, and bait us into embracing confrontation rather than avoiding it. In the coming days, Jovan Belcher's actions and their possible connection to football will be analyzed. Who knows? But here, wrote Jason Whitlock, is what I believe. If Jovan Belcher didn't possess a gun, he and Cassandra Perkins would both be alive today. The second half is next from Dallas.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I mean, look at O.J. Simpson. I mean, did he use a gun?
Yeah, he was innocent, though, so I don't know why you brought him up.
All right, well, lots of people are killed with lots of things, and to emphatically say that because he owned a gun, they're both dead is blatantly a fallacy.
To say that if he didn't have a gun, they wouldn't be dead.
Yeah, that's a fallacy. So, that's ridiculous to say. Whitlock's in it. He also said the NRA is the Ku Klux Klan. While I don't agree with everything the NRA does and says, I don't think they're the Ku Klux Klan. As a matter of fact, if you want to get to the real issue, gun control is racism. Most gun control laws in this country were designed to prevent blacks from owning guns, and they started shortly after the Civil War. Right here in Michigan, the reason that we have gun boards and licensing and permits to purchase was after a black physician in 1925 defended himself against the KKK and shot and killed a man. He was tried and found not guilty. But after that, they said, boy, we can't let black people own guns, so we got to make sure that they come in person so we can see them to see if they're black and deny them. And if they're good old white boys, then we'll give them the permit. And that's not just Michigan. That's all across this country. 1968 Gun Control Act was enacted in part to stop Black Panthers from openly carrying firearms during their protests. So, if you want to look at the history of gun control, look at racism. They go hand in hand. So the very people, the black community who supposedly hates guns, don't even understand the history of what gun control does. Black populations that need firearms to protect themselves the most are the ones that demonize weapons. And so I disagree with the KKK comment and all that. So you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, it's obvious that...
And in his point that... sorry, I didn't let you go.
No, I'm used to it. Go ahead.
He's used to it. So, he also said that guns are far more used, in crimes and all this. It's not true. Department of Justice has done studies on this, and guns are used in self-defense hundreds of thousands of times a year in this country, often without even firing a shot. The mere presence of drawing the weapon and scaring someone off can prevent crime.
Or even less than that, the act of just openly carrying a firearm, and we've seen evidence that just having the firearm visible will deter crime.
And one of the reasons that the United States has such a low amount of home break-ins where people are home as opposed to the UK. I mean, the UK, most of the break-ins are 60 to 70% of the time. People are home. Because they know they don't have guns.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
In the United States, it's like 13% or less where there's break-ins with people in the house because criminals in the U.S. know that a lot of people own guns, and they might have one in the house. So it actually deters crime.
It's a bit more dangerous to be a criminal like that here in most cities. I mean, you have your Chicago, your New York, and some places in California and D.C. that
why is difficult.
It's really easy to be a criminal and break into homes because you're pretty sure that nobody legally owns firearms.
And we can actually supply some statistics and references with actual data from college professors who have looked at more guns equal less crime. Dr. John Lott has done a lot of research over the last 20 years, and his research consistently shows that where you have more guns in law-abiding citizens' hands, the less crime there is. You have a lot of crime in places like Chicago and New York City where law-abiding citizens, the everyday person, cannot own firearms lawfully.
Yeah, and
criminals know that.
This notion that more guns equal more danger is something Costas keeps.
He just spouting,
repeating.
not just Costas, but it's the whole anti-gun.
It is, and it's the big argument, and
the
and
mantra.
When states, Michigan specifically, but when states, become shall issue states for concealed pistol licenses, that's the big argument. That there's going to be blood in the streets, and everything that you went through, and it just doesn't happen.
It spouts that crap off. So Costas had to go on, on the defensive and go on some talk shows and I didn't mean what I said I meant, but this is what I really mean, which is, he wants to get rid of all the guns. So our second clip, I think, is on the Dan Patrick show.
Yep, I believe Dan Patrick, and I think it was maybe the next day.
It might have been the next day.
Fairly quickly he went on Dan Patrick, and
he kind of asked him.
Dan Patrick said, "Well, what do you think about gun control?
Yeah, how do you feel about it?"
Well, here's where I stand. I do not want to see the Second Amendment repealed. I don't want to see a prohibition on people owning guns. People should be able to own guns for their own protection. Obviously, those who are hunters, but there's a proliferation of guns in this country. The access to guns is too easy in some cases. I don't see any reason why a citizen should be able to arm himself, as they can in some states, in some cases, arm himself in ways that only the police or the military should be able to. To have a virtual militia purchased by mail order or purchased at gun shows, why do you need a semi-automatic weapon? What possible use is there for a citizen to have a semi-automatic weapon?
Yeah, what possible use, Brian, could there ever be for a citizen to own a semi-automatic weapon? Do you know what semi-automatic means?
I do.
That means if you pull the trigger,
a gun or the bullet,
it goes boom. Yeah.
So those cowboy 6-shooters, those could be considered automatics, I suppose.
I don't think they are semi-automatic, though.
Really? Because you pull the trigger and they go bang.
Yeah.
But it's not much different than the hunting rifles that are ubiquitous in this country, that when you pull the trigger, it fires and it loads another round into the chamber, and then you pull the trigger, as opposed to an automatic weapon where you just pull the trigger and hold the trigger and it continues to fire until you let go of the trigger. That's an automatic, which, by the way, you can own in this country.
Yeah, legally.
But you need to jump through some hoops, pay a $200 tax to the federal government.
Tax?
It's a stamp. It's actually called a stamp. It's a $200 stamp. You can actually mail the gun with $200 stamp, but no. And you have to get permission from your local police chief and the federal government, and then you have to pay about $10,000 to $15,000
just for the gun,
for a fully automatic rifle. Yeah. Because this country doesn't allow you to own one that's made after 1986, 83, somewhere there.
One of those.
It's
states.
in the 80s, you know.
Yep.
So let's say a Thompson machine gun from the gangsters' day. Those things are $15,000, $20,000, depending on the condition. So
they're really cool, though.
Yeah, you can own them, but it makes it very difficult. But semi-autos you can do, and that's I have a semi-automatic shotgun I use for duck hunting.
But
so what?
But
shoots 5 shotgun
But for sure, Brian, if you paint it black and put a funny grip on it, only police and the military should have those.
Well, that I agree with.
Right, because I mean, if they're black,
that makes them more dangerous.
They're much more dangerous if they're black because, well, they're black.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I have.
What about gray?
Well, I don't. No, gray's okay.
Okay, just black.
Just if it's a scary black gun.
Okay, I saw a pink one once.
Pink's definitely okay. You can give those to children.
Okay.
Unattended.
I don't know. Disregard that. I don't know if that's good advice. The other thing is you can't go online and just buy an arsenal. You have to go through a federal firearms license person before you can just buy. You just can't go and order it. You know, there's laws about shipping it across states.
Yeah.
And you can't mail order a gun since 1968.
Yeah.
They took care of that.
Took care of that because I'm sure that was a huge problem.
That was a huge problem. And so he gets a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, and that's typical of the anti-gun lobby.
And he talks a little bit more on O'Reilly, too, about the Second Amendment, because, I think Bill O'Reilly in the interview that evening or later, the next day, that night or something, asked him, what do you think about the Second Amendment?
Obviously, Americans have a right to bear arms. I'm not looking to repeal the Second Amendment. I haven't immersed myself in the issue throughout my life. I'm aware of it, as many Americans are. I didn't call for any specific prohibition on guns, never used the words gun control. I quoted from a column by Jason Whitlock, who was in Kansas City for a long time, now is on the Fox Sports website, in which he mentioned, I think credibly, a gun culture in this country. Now, it plays itself out in many ways, but it's a mentality about and toward guns that almost always leads to tragedy rather than safety.
Right. I don't believe that.
No,
we cited some statistics with the Department of Justice.
Like I said, he keeps repeating this, that more guns
means more crime,
lead to tragedy more than less guns would. And I think that's the exact opposite, I think.
And, they never miss an opportunity to use a tragedy that happens rarely. When you look at, 80 million gun owners and 200 million guns in the world, it's amazing that there aren't more, people that are injured with them. And the fact is, it's one of the lowest accidental death rates. You're more likely to drown, be killed in a car accident, than you are with a firearm, and it's more likely that you're gonna protect yourself with a firearm.
I heard a top-rated radio host today mention that if we just banned the wheel, we could save millions of lives.
Yeah.
The wheel has killed millions of people since it was invented.
Yeah.
A lot of accidental deaths.
Injuries.
The logic just doesn't make sense if you start thinking about it and apply it to all the other things that actually do kill more people than guns.
And all they emphasize is the bad things that happen instead of the good. 2,000 kids drowned in swimming pools a year.
Yep.
About 300 kids are accidentally killed with the guns a year. I mean, any death's tragic. But if you really want to save children's lives, ban swimming pools.
Ban swimming pools. Yeah, and like he said, that.
So it's not about safety.
More guns lead to tragedy. I have an article right here. Actually, it's kind of a funny one.
Okay.
It's out of Texas. A guy breaks into a home at night. And the homeowner's in there sleeping. The homeowner wakes up.
One of those rare ones, or
yeah, the homeowner wakes up and says,
in Texas, for God's sake,
says, "What the hell are you doing in here?" Grabs his gun and chases the guy out to his his car and
the guy gets into his car.
The guy gets into his car and calls the police. The burglar calls the police on the homeowner.
Meanwhile, the wife of the homeowner is calling the police as well.
Yep. Yeah, the homeowner says, I pointed the gun at him and asked him who he was and what the hell he was doing in my house. Said his name was Lance, and
And the guy in the car is like, "Oh, there's somebody pointing a gun at me in my car."
Obviously, the burglar was arrested. I don't think there were any charges brought up on the homeowner.
No,
I hope there weren't.
As a matter of fact, Texas is one of the states where you can actually shoot somebody to protect your property.
Yeah.
Unlike many states where your life has to be in danger.
Yep.
Nobody said criminals are smart.
No, we see it all the time. People break into houses and break their leg and then sue the homeowner.
And that's the other thing, and win. That's what's sad.
Yeah, exactly.
What people don't realize that are in favor of gun control is one, how do you do it? And criminals don't obey the law
by definition.
So what you're really doing is disarming law-abiding citizens, and especially with gun-free zones where law-abiding citizens can't carry a gun some places. You're creating killing zones.
There's
no question about
the theater in Colorado and Aurora,
which we'll talk about in a little bit.
The Batman shooting.
That was a posted no firearms even in Colorado. People were unarmed in there, and it looks like the shooter had picked that theater out for that very reason, because he bypassed a bunch of theaters that were closer to his home.
And a funny thing that we could talk about now, or we have a clip where Costas kind of mentions this, but he had an assault weapon, right, the scary black rifle, that jammed, and he ended up using a shotgun anyway.
Yeah.